Hello everybody and welcome to History Bite number 45, dated September the 19th, 2020. I'm Walter, your mobile historian and blue-collar scholar. This History Bite is entitled Bypassing the 22nd Amendment. Now, as we covered in a previous History Bite, we know that the 22nd Amendment to the U.S. Constitution prohibits any individual from being elected to the American presidency more than twice. Okay? It also prohibits an individual who's serving as president who has served more than 2 years of a term for which someone else was elected president from being elected more than once. So with that in mind, it remains an open legal question that's been debated by constitutional scholars for many years as to whether or not it is permissible for a person to serve more than 2 terms as president legally without being elected to the office. The easiest road to test this theory out would be to take along a 2-term maxed out incumbent president as one's vice presidential running mate, or to take along a 2-term maxed out former president as one's vice presidential running mate to test out these uncharted legal waters. Okay? So we then ask ourselves, would it be legally possible for this 2-term maxed out president, former president, or soon to be leaving office president, to then put him or herself, in a direct path of succession to the presidency? Okay? Legally and logically, it would seem that there is nothing to stand in the way of this. Based on the clear and plain language of the 22nd Amendment, it is not impermissible for a person to serve more than 2 terms as president, as long as they're not elected to the office. Okay? Now that might sound a little strange, but keep in mind, a vice president is there to take over the job if the president should no longer be able to do it for any reason. Okay? Now, if the vice president is simply doing his job and fills in for the president, or maybe even take over for the president altogether, well, that's just what's ordered by the Constitution. And the Constitution, by way of the 22nd Amendment, does not forbid a person from serving more than 2 terms as president, okay? As long as you're not elected to the office more than twice. So technically, you could, in my humble opinion, serve as president more than twice, a full term even, as long as you're not elected to the spot, if you have maxed out your 2 elected terms. Now, of course, let's say, for example, a former president has been taken along as a vice presidential running mate for someone running for the presidency, okay? They win. That ticket wins. And some, heaven forbid, unforeseen circumstance happens, and the president dies, or he has to resign from office. And thus this former president, who was vice president, now becomes president. Well, he's now the president of the United States. And for all intents and purposes, we're going to, for the sake of argument, say that the president whom he ran with had to leave the office for whatever reason in the very beginning of the administration, for the very beginning of the term. So now this former president who's already served 2 terms is now going to serve a 3rd full term in the presidency. Okay? Legally and constitutionally, there is nothing to stand in the way of that. Because this person was not elected to the presidency, were they? No, they were elected to the vice presidency. And the Constitution places no prohibitions whatsoever on how many times one can be elected vice president. Only president, folks. No more than twice at max. But one can be elected vice president for an unlimited amount of terms. Okay? That there is no restriction on that. So now you've got this former president who's already served 2 terms, and now he's going to serve a 3rd. Constitutionally, there are no impediments to that. Okay? Now, ethically, I think a lot of people will be able to see between the lines that this individual has obviously got, is really thirsty for power to want the presidency for a third term, okay? I mean, he's already had it for 2 terms, and now he wants it for a third, okay? So, you know, but everything I've said here is all speculation and theory, okay? It remains an open legal question and will remain an open legal question on whether or not a president who has been elected twice, thus they've maxed out their 2-term limit, can once again serve in the Oval Office for another term, all right? Now, obviously, with all that in mind, assuming for the sake of argument that everything I just said did happen, they wouldn't be able to run at the next election. Obviously, the Constitution would prohibit that by way of the 22nd Amendment. That part is clear. That's not in dispute. That's black letter law from the 22nd Amendment. They couldn't be elected to a third term in office. But nothing stipulates that they couldn't serve a third term as long as they got into the presidency via back door, thus the vice presidency, due to some unforeseen circumstances where the president died or resigned, and this former president, being the vice president, now automatically steps up to the nation's highest office in spite of having served 2 elected terms already. Now he's going to serve a third term. So it will serve the nation well to debate this topic in upcoming years, because, especially in recent times also, because we've heard President Trump speak of a possible third term in office, though he knows the 22nd Amendment will not allow him to run again. But based on everything I've just said, it may be possible for him to serve. It is possible for him, theoretically, to be taken along as someone's vice president, as an incumbent, you know, or if he leaves office, to be taken as someone's vice president as a former president. Okay, and he could weasel back into the presidency that way. And, you know, so it's quite possible, folks, to get this conclusion legally. You can serve more than 2 terms as president of the United States. You just cannot be elected to more than 2. Okay? And it will remain an open legal question until someone actually does what I have said in this history bite. Take along an outgoing president who has maxed out their 2 terms as vice president, okay? Or take along as vice president a former president who has maxed out their 2 terms, all right? For the record, we have 1 living former president who the 22nd Amendment would obviously not be applicable against at this time, and that would be former President Carter, who only served 1 term in office. But to date, all of our living former presidents have served 2 terms in office. But the 22nd Amendment would not legally prohibit any of them from once again serving in the presidency, and perhaps even a full term in the presidency, if someone were to take one of them along as their vice president. But the only thing that is certain is that they wouldn't be able to run again at the next presidential election after they became president. So I'll wrap this up. I hope you found this as enjoyable as I did. You know, it's always interesting to debate these type of theoretical topics, you know, because again, they remain nothing but theory and speculation until someone actually tries it out. And that's when it gets really juicy. So I thank you very much for listening to this History Bite. Continue to spread the information, continue to learn. I appreciate all of you who listen to these. Take care, stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you at the next one. Peace.